Good evening to all of you. I think you all can hear me. Sajani, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, ma'am.
Thank you. Then today, actually, after a long time, the Women Engineers Forum is having this webinar. And today our topic is, it began long ago. We continue the story of the engineers, the women. Let me welcome our resource person, Mr. Dulip Vijayatilaka, on behalf of the Women Engineers Forum and the Institution of Engineers Sri Lanka. I welcome you for this webinar, and we are excited to listen to you and appreciate your understanding to accept our invitation with a short notice. Thank you very much for having this webinar, because this is long outstanding seminar. But anyway, we were able to organize this today, even though today is a Saturday. I can see some members here. And also all the participants here, I would like to welcome you all for this webinar, and I think you all can have a good time today and share the experience of our resource person. And after the webinar, I think we all can have a discussion session. Then you can ask your questions from our resource person, our experienced resource person. Then thank you very much, and I'll hand over the session to Engineer Ms. Sajani Totagamo to introduce our resource person today. Thank you.
Good evening, all. Mr. Dulip Vijayatilaka, he is a professional with senior level exposure, experience, and education with more than 20 years of board-based and progressively responsible experience in banking and management of human resources. Over 15 years of experience in working with students, professionals, educational institutions, and bodies in providing multiple services to sustain stakeholder preferences, quality, and continuous development. Over 20 years of experience in building the lives of individuals and families, including school children and working professionals, handling social disputes for the well-being of women, men, and children, and social development through systematic interventions. He has worked as senior executive training and development in Ceylon Bank PLC for 11 years, and he was the former head of human resources Citibank NA Colombo. So I cordially invite our resource person of today's webinar, Mr. Dulip Vijayatilaka, to present the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sajani and Mrs. Devika Be Surya for the kind introduction given. I just wanted to check with you if I am sufficiently audible to you as of now.
Yes, Mr. Dulip. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, just I usually start with the bad news. So the bad news is I am just experiencing a power cut, which was not scheduled at all. But I hope this will run only for half an hour, after which I will turn on my video as well. Currently, I'm logging in from my desktop, and in case there is a log off that takes place due to the power outage, I will quickly log in from my laptop, which will take about, I believe, 5 minutes for me to log in. So just be patient about it, because this is something that I didn't plan for. So first of all, I would like to thank the president and the rest of the engineers of IESL for having organized this session, for especially targeting the women engineers. And this is a timely topic, as I always see in most organizations. The women always face multiple issues irrespective of the profession. Before we start the session proper, I have a couple of items for your attention. First one is, in the event of a power outage, which we are experiencing right now, or a network outage, please remain in the meeting until I return. Also, please notify me if I'm not audible to you, any of you, anytime. So you can always let me know if I am not audible to you sufficiently. And the third one is, you have the complete authority to stop me and question me at any time. That's the true authority that you have as the participants of the presentation. And you have the right to argue, disregard, and challenge the presentation's contents. So the contents I'm sharing with you, while the majority of the contents are based on research, the recent research, you will still have the right to disregard, argue, and challenge the contents of it. That's actually part of the learning process. There will also be a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. However, if you have any questions, you can always raise those questions while the presentation is on. I am totally all right with it because we have sufficient ample time to answer any of those questions that may come up during the presentation as well. Instead of writing on the chat box, I would prefer if you can verbally raise those questions in any language. The reason is when you raise the question verbally, the rest of the participants also can hear the question, so that the answer that I'm providing would be more relevant and understandable to the rest of the participants. So are you all right with these requests before we go forward?
Yes, we are okay.
Great, thank you very much. So now we are going to look at what exactly is stopping women from achieving their full potential. If you look at the 1970s and 1980s, the women made remarkable progress in different sectors, industries, and accessing different positions of power and authority. But in the 1990s, it has really stalled, in the sense it has really dropped the participation of women in high level managerial discussions, strategy, and leadership. And that's something that we noticed in the 1990s and there onwards. Up until today, all the women globally have been facing multiple issues in their respective organizations as compared to 1970s and 1980s. There is a true reason behind this, and we are going to look at those reasons as well as we progress with the presentation. If you are to look at why women remain so dramatically underrepresented in organizations, you will hear from the vast majority a lament, kind of an unfortunate expression, but that's the inevitable truth, which goes something like this. The reason why the women employees dramatically underrepresented in most organizations and industries is that the high-level job require extremely long hours of work. And the second reason that has been found through research is that women's devotion to family makes it impossible for them to put in those long hours as the others would do. Now, these are the two true reasons as to why the participation of women employees in organizations has dropped. But I'm not saying that these two reasons are factually right, but based on the research that was conducted recently, it has been found that these are the main two reasons why the women employees do not represent top level or managerial level posts in organization. And for that matter, not necessarily top level, even middle level, lower level has the same issue when it comes to professional jobs. In my view, this is a business related matter. Now, as you saw in the earlier slide, in 1970s and 1980s, the representation of women was very high in top level organizational affairs. But post 1990s, it has dropped. In my view, it's because of the technology and the business dynamics that have really impacted this situation. Technology in terms of communication and fast approach towards decisions based upon a variety of technological tools that are available for business. And on the other hand, the business dynamics is such that the businesses have elevated their visions, strategies, and therefore the profit targets for each of those businesses gradually every year. So these are the two reasons, as I can see, why in post-1990s, the people find it extremely difficult to manage their work life, especially the women employees of organizations. If you have any questions, you can always stop me. I'm always open to answer any of those questions while we are progressing with the presentation. What does research show us? Now, recently we conducted a research with a suitable sample of women employees in different organizations, which covered all professionals. What we discovered was there is virtually no difference in turnover rates of women and men. If you take these industries that we were researching we found that when it comes to staff turnover, that is the rate at which people resign from organizations, the women and the men showed the same rate. There was no high turnover rate for women and low turnover rate for men. So this is something that we saw in our research. The second one we found was employees who took advantage of accommodations, virtually all of whom were women. They are condemned. Before we go forward, let me clarify you the meaning of accommodations. In this situation, the accommodations means certain facilities or options that the employers provide to women employees. Accommodations would include going part-time and shifting to internally facing roles. Now, going part-time or working from home or getting rid of front office roles, such as meeting with clients as engineers, as working instead of working in sites, providing consultancy. The option is given to shift into internal roles, such as monitoring and control. So these are the kind of accommodations that have been allowed to the women employees. But those women employees who took the advantage of these accommodations, virtually all of whom were women, were condemned and saw their careers derailed. What does it mean? Now, when a female employee took these options of working from home or going part-time or getting into an internally facing role, what happened was their promotions and their benefits were not as usual. So their careers got really derailed, in the sense they couldn't progress in their lives. So therefore, although the accommodations were given, that were not in the benefit of the female employees or the women employees. The third one is promise that the client, the promises made to the client without thinking of how much time and energy it takes to deliver on such promises. So the employees had to deliver half the time, within half the time that it really requires to deliver the clients. For example, if you take a job of an engineer, when you take over a project, it may have a reasonable period of time to complete. But because you want to win the bid, some other businesses, what they would do is they would probably quote a competitive price, but the project to be completed within a very short period of time. So that kind of reasons has been has in fact prevented the employees from working with peace of mind. And this is because the organizations are trying to overpromise and overdeliver to their clients. And that has become a norm nowadays. But I personally do not believe in this norm, because that will only harm the humans and the women employees, especially who are working hard in organizations. The next one we found was, whereas firm members attributed distress over work-family conflict primarily to women, we found that many men were suffering too. So this is something probably irrelevant to our discussion, but when you really go deep dive into the real the contributions of male, female employees in organizations, while the work-family conflict primarily was on the women employees, the men also were facing the same issue in those organizations. So I'm going to clarify you why the problem still remains for the women employees or women engineers, while the men or male employees still manage their roles in organizations. The next point we found was, women are going to have kids and not want to work, or they are going to have kids and might want to work, but will not want to travel every week and live this lifestyle that an engineer requires, such as 60 to 70 years of work. Now, what does it say? Women are going to have kids and not want to work is something that people told us. They will have kids and they will not work, or they will have the kids and they will work as well, but they will not be able to travel and work as usual. They are not able to put in 60 to 70 hours of work per week. So this is also a finding of the research. Childless women whose promotion record was no better than that of mothers. Although the people say, the employers or the leaders of the organization say that we have provided accommodation for female employees, they are using all those accommodations, therefore we have facilitated the female employees to work at top level, top ranks in the organizations, while they say that if you look at childless women, that is women who are not either married, not married, or not having children, their promotion record was also no better than the that of the mother employees. So therefore, there's a contradiction in terms of what the leaders say about women employees and the facilities provided as of now versus what they really face as female employees. So regardless of the fact that you are having children or not, your progress in the organization as women employees has been the same. So these are some of the important findings that we found. Please feel free to question me of these findings or any other inputs that you may have. As I repeatedly say, that's a right that you have. Now, the problem for women is nothing else, but they have a different psychic tension, right? According to the work-family narrative or the work-family, balance or work-life balance issue and broader cultural notions, their commitment to family is primary by nature. For female employees, their commitment to family is primary as compared to a male employee. So their commitment to work has to be secondary, therefore. This is what the norm or the notion in the society. So they consider the primary duty of the women would be to commit themselves to the family, to family affairs and family requirements, while the work would be secondary for them. And there is a disadvantage over this thought, which I'm going to explain to you later. They are expected to embrace an intensive, my family is all important approach to parenting. Now, the female employees are expected to embrace the psychology or the philosophy that my family is all important and not my job. And this is the expectation that has been shouldered on the women employees, while it's not the case for the women employees. A stance encouraged by the firm's really accessible accommodations. So while the accommodations are given, the notion or the norm in the society is contradicting to the accommodations. You can see that there is always a lot of disconnects in what we are currently looking at in terms of balancing work life for women employees versus what actually takes place in the organization. But a family first stance comes at a significant cost to their careers, to the women employees' careers. Why? Because the moment they show the employer that my family is my first and that's my stance, it really gets impacted on their career. And it will definitely harm or obstruct a lot of professional ambitions that the female employees may have. Now, this is not the case for men. As I told you earlier, in the research, we found that men also face the same issue, but they have created a norm where for men, the primary commitment would be the job itself. And for them, the family would be the secondary one. So this has been a norm that has been set in the market, in the professional markets, or in other words, in industries where professionals work. Now, can you see, there is no reality as such, but there are certain norms set by the people themselves. And this is where the problem really comes into light. And this is where we have to really look at in managing this situation and making the lives of women employees much more comfortable in whatever the role they play, irrespective of industry. Do you have any questions up to now? Please let me know if you have any questions. Okay, I can see the chat box that there are 2 questions. Please message your questions here. Yes, you can do so. Can we get the PowerPoint presentation at the end of the presentation? Yes, I will be sharing with you the PowerPoint presentation. I will definitely do that. I'll share it with Sajani so that she'll be able to share this document with all of you later. I can also see that UPS is giving me messages that that the battery is draining right now. But don't worry, give me 5 minutes. Once if I get logged off, I'll quickly join from my laptop. So let's proceed then. Now I'm coming back to your profession, that is women engineers. What are the pressures that women engineers face today? So I had a couple of discussions with engineers from different segments. That is programmers. Then I spoke with civil engineers. I spoke with network consultants. I spoke with about 7, 8 people in the last 2 weeks to understand what sort of pressures that they face in their respective organizations. So this is what I gathered, and I have put them into 3 points, as you can see on the screen. The work family accommodations. Now, these the very same thing that I explained to you earlier. Going part-time or shifting to internally facing roles provides an appealing off-ramp from the path of overwork. Now, this is what the employers usually do. They give you the option of working part-time, and they'll give you flexible time schedules to work. They will provide you the options of working in internal roles, so that you don't have to commit
Dear all, please wait. The resource person will join again.
I am back, ladies and gentlemen. My apologies for this, because this is something that I never expected. In the interruption schedule, I didn't see that it was scheduled for today. There was no event, but unfortunately, they have imposed this power outage. My apologies once again. Do you hear me?
Yes, we
Please.
can
Yes,
hear.
yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Meantime, I got the power back as well. I will log in from my desktop because it's much clearer and the screen is larger. So I got power back, and I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Dulip.
Okay, thank you very much, and thanks a lot for being patient and bearing the situation with me. It's
It's
totally
totally
understood.
okay.
Yes.
We can continue.
Sure, sure. I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay, so these are the pressures that women engineers face today, as I told you, based on a primary research that was conducted with 7 to 8 or less than 10 female engineers, is what we found. Now, these accommodations given to them, while it looks very impressive and user-friendly for the women employees, women engineers, the reality is such that when it comes to their career progress, there is very bad impact on these options taken. Then the next pressure that they have is the pressure to give up what they saw as their rational style in favor of the hard changing masculine. Now, what does it mean? They are saying that however much they show their skills and potential as women engineers, there is a tendency to believe that it's always the men who can do this job. It's not the female who can do this job. When it comes to client interactions, negotiations with clients, and convincing clients to take certain terms, conditions of the project, and meeting deadlines, negotiating on the deadlines, and all these, while the women employees, female engineers can do it really well, the notion or the image or the presumption that the majority has is that it's a masculine work, like it's a man's job, it's not a female job. The third push factor was the poor reputation of female partners with children whose mothering was roundly condemned. Now, this is something that I don't personally acknowledge at all, but very unfortunately, this is what we see in organizations, not necessarily even locally, in globally also. There is some orientation where the employers tend to believe that female partners with children, their performance can be very low. Right now, these female employees, they were well performing employees of these organizations who had lived fast to their professional identities and achieved much recognition and success in their own roles. And these achievements actually contradict the idea that it is possible to meet the demands of both work and family. So this is what the employers think about female employees. So this is actually the reality based upon research or the primary research that was conducted. And I believe the fact that we are aware of these thinkings or philosophies of the employers would itself would help us to look at solutions, how best we can protect our profession as female engineers, and how best we can project ourselves as professionals in front of these employers. So as we progress with the presentation, I'm going to share with you certain strategies for this. Now, you as a female employee, female engineer, as you started your schooling in good old days, like as a child, you would have had, if somebody asks you, what is your ambition? What do you want to be in the future? You would have said a variety of names of the professions. And you would have said you want to be a doctor, you would have said you want to be an engineer, you would have said you want to be an actress. So you would have said a variety of things. So, and there is becoming an engineer in Sri Lanka is not an easy task. You have to perform well at the A-levels examinations. You have to work a lot of, you have to make a lot of efforts, work really hard as compared to any other subject, right? So I'm not condemning other subjects, but the fact that the fact of the truth is such that we have to accept that fact. And it's a lot of hard work that we have made here. So we should not be give up this situation that easily, because we have the power and the authority to ensure that the employers go by what we say, what we really want. So the most significant aspect of life are one's career and ambition, that we all agree. Whenever a new female engineer joins your organization, in your forums, in your entities, first thing that you should also remember is that they have a career ambition. It's a great thing for a female to have this. The majority of women are seeking work to support their families as well. Unlike those days, today the women are also supporting a lot in terms of financial support to their families, to their children, their parents, their siblings, and that's the immense support that they give. And because of the change in the environment and economic conditions, this transformation is now normal and dynamic. In good old days, when we had a very primitive, I should not use the word primitive, but the basic level of an economy in Sri Lanka, the approach or the contribution of female workers or the employees was different to now. You can't do what the women those days was doing as your profession. The dynamics, the business dynamics have changed. As I told you earlier, post 1990s, the business strategy, the involvement of business, the profit targets, the market, the efforts on improving market share, competition, all that have improved or not improved, they have changed. So that's the reason why you cannot compare and contrast those days with now. Since women are equally sharing the earning duty for the welfare of their families, the work-life balance of women employees has become a major topic today. That is why people are still talking about work-life balance requirements of female employees. In caring for small children families, a married woman bears more duty than a male. And that's an accepted fact. A father can say, no, I also look after the children and I also spend a lot of time with them. But yet for all, the mentally, the responsibility of looking after children, the parents, the siblings is always on the shoulders of female employees. And as you can see, there are certain biological reasons as to why female take a lot of responsibility as compared to male employees. Now, if it's a biological reason, which is proven, which has been proved in science, then there has to be a proportionate approach towards supporting female employees as well in that same proportion. You can't say that you are equal on both men and women, and therefore it's on equal grounds that we operate. No, it can't be equal grounds. It has to be different grounds, which is what we are actually discussing right now. Now, you as a child, when you had the aspiration to become an engineer, which has been a dream that has come true, and it's our duty now to protect that dream for us as well as the future engineers of Sri Lanka or even globally. Now, work-life balance. What exactly is the myth here? Is it about balancing time? Is it about balancing responsibilities? Or is it about balancing the mental well-being of the women engineers? Now, balancing time, I won't believe in balancing time as which would support work-life balance. It's not the case here. But you can, of course, challenge me if my thinking is wrong. Balancing time, if that's what we are talking about, saying this is work-life balance, then when you are working in the office for, say, 7 hours to 8 hours or even 12 hours, then during that time, you should not be thinking of your family. If it's a issue, if it's an issue pertaining to the time itself, then your efforts, when you effort in your office to work, you should be able to cut off your mind and work there, come back home and do the homework like a robot. It's not going to happen. It's not possible for a human being to act or react like that or work like that. So balancing responsibilities is also not really work-life balance in my view. Because your responsibility as a senior employee, or even as a junior employee, junior engineer, the efforts you make, your responsibility which are on your shoulders would not be over when you come home. So when you're at home also, the responsibilities would stay. Yes, you can forget about them, but it's not practically possible for all humans to do that. Maybe one or two, a few people may be able to do that, but that's not an acceptable norm to expect people to forget about responsibilities when they come home. That's not going to happen. Then what about balancing mental well-being? Now, when you work in office during the daytime, or maybe in a site, maybe in a client location, maybe in a lab or computer lab or any other lab. Now, if your if suddenly you have to think about your children, your parents, your siblings as to what they are doing, if you have a lot of a long agenda for the day to fulfill certain home front requirements, home requirements such as buying food items, buying groceries, taking your children for sports, seeing a doctor with your child, seeing a doctor with your parents, all that responsibility is on your shoulders. In other words, it's in your mind. You are always thinking about those also. Therefore, the work-life balance efforts should be supporting the mental well-being. It's not about allowing you, of course, allowing you uh, uh, pre-schedules or such as flexible work hours, allowing you to go home early or come back when you want is fine. That is a basic requirement. But balancing the mental well-being is the key here, which is the missing item here. And the most employers think by accommodating them with flexible work schedules or by giving them back office work, they can get rid of the responsibility of supporting the women employees for work-life balance. It's not going to be possible. Now, why is it important? Now, moreover, why is it important for us to have female employees, women engineers in our business? The reason is I'm not undermining the knowledge of men or male engineers, but I have to say this: the skill set of a female employee or a female engineer cannot be compared with a male engineer. That's a given. It's a proven thing in science. Two genders have two different skill sets. There are other genders in the world like transsexuals, then transgender. So they also have different skill sets in their. These are inbuilt skill sets in them. So we have to accept those facts. Now in Sri Lanka, given that now that the legality has changed, you can express your sexual orientation, which is fine. But the point I'm trying to highlight here is, why are we just harping upon having female employees in our organization? Because it's a requirement. It's a need. It's a need of the hour. You cannot operate only with men in organizations. It's not going to be possible. If you see the leading organizations globally, they have a target number of female employees representing the leadership board. And these are top level targets for them. And they have to meet those targets. And if they don't meet those targets, it's a performance issue. Why? Because the world has realized the importance of female women in work. And it's the same thing applies to the women engineers as well. So there was a TED talk made by a couple of female engineers as to how they took certain challenges as female engineers. And if you can watch them on YouTube, that will be really great. And these female engineers they are kind of legends or signatures of your field, and they really tell you how they got over certain societal situations where they were really challenged as engineers because they are female, and how they have transformed themselves to be best performing leaders in the organizations. And some of them are even owning certain organizations or businesses, and they make a lot of profits there. Let me quickly check the chat box. I can see that there are two chats here. You are in presenter view. Yes, I'm in presenter view. What's the screen that you see right now on the screen? Is it the work-life balance? What exactly is the myth?
I think you are in the presenter's view. Then I think we can see the next slide also. It's better if you can have the full screen.
Okay, so you can see the notes as well, right?
Yes.
Which is fine, but the main slide, is it large enough for you to read it or not?
But I think somebody must have joined from the phones, mobile phones, then they can't read it, I think.
Okay, let me see. Just a second. How about now?
Now it's okay. It's fine. Thank you.
Just 1 second. You can post any questions if you have any on the chat box until I log it from my laptop as well.
Recording in progress.
Is that fine now?
Yes, it's fine.
Okay. So we're going to examine the obstacles that we face right now. Now, I am pretty sure that you're not really wanting me to talk about the existing obstacles that you are facing in your roles already, which I know. But I would like to touch upon some of these challenges, and we are going to look at these challenges in 4 different categories, and that will help us to look at solutions for these challenges based on the 5 strategies that I'm going to propose to you. Now, there are certain challenges which are called professional challenges. And if you look at these challenges, one of the key challenges that you have is the long working hours or odd working hours as engineers. And sometimes you have to work on weekends as well, on poor days, and there's no space for you to plan out your personal life as a result of this. And unlike any other professions, like a banker's profession, the profession of a doctor, even at times has some space to breathe, because they can easily replace their role or services with someone else. But you as an engineer, it's going to be definitely impossible, because your personal involvement in the project or the work is a requirement there. So that's a kind of a challenge that is there, which is a professional challenge. And then you have to always connect with the office through conference calls or through phone. Now, this is one of the reasons why in 1990s, post 1990s, the representation of women in organizations has really lowered, because the technology itself has really made the speed of communication as an obstacle for people to have a good work-life balance, which impacts the female employees more often. Then frequent official travel for longer durations. Now, when I spoke with the civil engineers, female engineers, what they told me was, today, especially today, the organizations that they work for requires them to travel outside of Colombo, and these are long travels. Even if they try to replace with some other engineer, that's not going to be possible, and the employer is not supporting such solutions, because they want the female engineer herself to be present in the client location. Now, that's a very, I mean, it's a pathetic, I wouldn't use the word pathetic, but it is pathetic. Check back with the office even when they are away on vacation. Now, but the other key problem that they have is they apply for annual leave, but very unfortunately, even when they are on annual leave, they have to attend to various matters. Now, one of the reasons one of the female engineers faces is that there is some additional funds required to run the project. Now, while she was on leave, the client has raised a concern saying, you're not meeting the deadlines given in the program schedule. And therefore, he has come through a lawyer and said, he wants a price reduction because you're not meeting the deadlines. Now, the management has requested this female engineer to recalculate the costing, redo the costing, and find out how best we can price it now. Now she's on leave, she's on vacation, but very unfortunately, she has to attend to it. Now, this is a professional challenge that they face. Involving additional jobs and assignments. This is again an issue where they have to take over now, given that they have curtailed the number of people, including engineers in some of the organizations. When an additional job and assignment comes, the existing engineers have to work on those. So it's another professional issue, one of the latest ones that they face. Non-supportive attitude of supervisors. So I'm not going to explain this any further. You yourself would have realized about the impact of non-supportive attitude of supervisors. Then non-supportive attitude of colleagues. Sometimes your colleagues also do the same thing. They don't work as a counter partner. So they always try to complete their own work and wash their hands and go away. I mean, I'm using normal language here, but if I have to say it more professionally, the partnering in the organizations and the interrelationships with people need to be improved. So that's a challenge that we see in today's organizations. Travel time between home and work, once again, an issue. Because for some of these engineers, their location, the head office is not centrally located in Colombo. The head office is in Kurunegala, but the projects are in Colombo. So whenever they have to attend certain meetings, the management and the rest of the people, they don't come to Colombo. So she has to travel to Kurunegala. And this is, of course, a common issue, but this impacts the female employees much further. Pursuing education, courses, training for career growth, again, is a challenge, because they have to manage their home affairs, look after children, and also ensure that the families will looked after. So while they do that, there is no option or an opportunity for them to improve their education and training for their own career growth. would you like to add anything here? The challenges that you face in the organization, in your own organizations? Or would it cover everything? And I hope it covers everything, at least to a large extent. So let's see what are the challenges in terms of the personal challenges. One of the personal challenges they face is husband frequently or continuously travels or employed in another city or state. And most of the husbands, what happens is when they come home, it's very late. Of course, it's a genuine reason why they have to work late. Given the organization today, they may have to, but it has become a personal challenge for female engineers as well. Non-supportive nature of the family members. Some of the family members, they don't support you in the manner that you expect them to support you. Not enough time spent on taking care of babies. So when you come home, it's way too late. Or even your children, your children who come home after school, you're not sure whether they have done their homework properly, whether they have prepared themselves for the next day's work. So all that is not properly looked into because you have to work long hours in the organization. Not enough time to spend on taking care of dependent elders. Some of the people, their parents are too old. They are not able to do their own work. And some of the engineers who have to actually look after even the parents, not only children, even the parents. So that's also there. Non-supportive nature of friends and relatives, which would be obvious situation for most of you, and inadequate attention to own needs. And some of them, while the doctors have advised them to take at least a biannual medical checkup for health reasons, some of these female engineers have not been able to perform it for the last 2-3 years because there have been continuous issues with the organizations. Of course, due to the pandemic that we faced for 2 years continuously up until last year end, and even now it continues. So their attention towards their own needs is also really not focused. And some of them they feel depression and hypertension also. This is part of this high level of stress. Now, depression and hypertension, these are not good signs for an individual, irrespective of the female or male. It's not a good sign, but especially for a woman, it's not good because the entire family would look up to you when it comes to situations. They will depend on you for advice, support, and the true friendship when it comes to a family. So these are some of the personal challenges that the people face. So I have a feeling that you are not agreeing with me with all these challenges, but at least some of you may, depending on your situations in your own respective locations. Now, what are some of the professional enhancement factors that we should have? Now, like I told you earlier, managing time, managing responsibility would not mean that you are managing the work life, but those two support you. Now, flexible working hours is a professional enhancement factor that we can look at. Career breaks, sabbatical leave. Now, I think in Sri Lanka, taking a career break is the most difficult one. So in our strategies, we are going to talk about this. Then paid time off for family bookings. Now, while this is available and while you're on a family booking like a vacation, if you are still interrupted, that's not going to be good. But these are one of the things that can come into the functions of an organization when it comes to women looking after women employees. Outward self-development programs. So this is part of professional development. Then parenting and family support programs. Now, those will also be supportive for the female employees. Pick up and drop service to and from office would have been a great option for female employees. Insurance plan of self, this is available, but some other people are saying the insurance plans for self and family is not sufficient, it's not good enough. So these are also professional enhancements that can be made. And conductive and supportive work environment, obviously it has to be a conductive, irrespective of male, female. But what we find is some of the female employees, they find that even the environment itself that they work, certain sites, they are not provided with sufficient or adequate or suitable location to sit and work. The female employees can't work like men because there is some difference between the two genders. You cannot expect a female employee to behave like a man when it comes to a site visit at a site. So this is not going to be possible. Then work from home is a good option that the engineers can look at, but that would exclude some of the site visits or client locations that might require to be visited. If you're an electronic engineer, like a programmer, at times you may have to, of course, you will have the majority of the time to work from home, but at least some portion of your time would have to be spent at the client location or in office, depending on the requirements of the day or the time. Now, there are certain personal enhancement factors also that can be made. Now,
Excuse me, Mr. Dulip, that there's a message in the chat box which is relevant to a previous slide.
Right. Thank you very much, Sajani, for that. Another professional challenge, sexual harassment by superiors and colleagues. Yes, this is true. What I would like to tell you here is when it comes to harassment and sexual harassment and bullying in organizations, there is zero tolerance in Sri Lanka. So the moment you come across this kind of a situation, you don't have to even inform the employer. You can directly lodge a complaint with the nearest police saying that you are sexually harassed or you are bullied. So this is something that you as a female employee, it's a major right that you have, and this should not be tolerated at all. Zero tolerance. So one of the best practices the organization do is the moment they come across a situation where they find that there is sexual harassment or bullying in the organization, they will immediately suspend the work of that employee. They will not know whether the person is right or wrong. That doesn't matter. They will immediately suspend. That's the first step that you take to safeguard the female employee. And then you will go into a formal inquiry, find out the real facts. You will do a sample survey with various groups and people. And if it's proved that the man has committed, man or female or whatever, let's assume that as men, because this forum is for female engineers. So then the employer has the total right to terminate the employee immediately with no further notice. Remember, you have to exercise your rights there. If you feel like you are bullied or sexually harassed, either physically or verbally, or even through body language, you have the total right to go against and do that. The organization that I have seen, the global organizations, even the top level employees who were supposed to be the best leaders in the organizations were terminated. No tolerance at all, because humanity is primary, and that's the number one that we all should look into when it comes to work. Profession, you can keep it aside, but the good behavior of men and women is the one that is expected. Otherwise, you will not be able to work well in the organization. That's going to be definitely impacting you and your family. So don't tolerate those things. Now, personal enhancement factors, regular exercises and fitness schedule. My advice to you is don't be bothered about your responsibilities and the work that you're doing in office. Just keep them aside the moment you leave the office, because thinking of those work while you're at home is not going to resolve any issue for you. That is guaranteed. So the moment you train your mind or train yourself to keep all that issues in office itself on the desk, come back home and attend to your regular work. One thing that you can do is you can diarize all important things or even minor things on a desk diary so that you will not miss anything. Even if you miss anything, you will know what you have missed. So one thing that you can do is just keep all the responsibilities away from you. And when I say this in some of the forums, people told me that in our organizations, you can't do it like that. Even when you're at home, you have to be thinking of what you're going to do next day. You have to respond to some of the emails, and you have to ensure that you respond to the emails even in the midnight within a reasonable time, and that's the expectation of the employer. So expectation of the employer is different. The employee should be able to change the expectations of the employer. So maybe there are few people who can do that, but everyone can't do it. There are certain ethical backgrounds within which an organization have to operate, because our primary duty is to look after ourselves, our families, and our children, and then the society. When you look after yourself and your families, that will naturally look after the society as well. So in that sense, I am advising you that you should take the responsibility of your health, your personal life. Of course, we are going to target different strategies in the meantime, in the next few slides. Yoga and meditation is something that you can look at, or you can get involved in a hobby or a sport that you really love. Don't try to do sports that others are doing or others want you to do. Take something that you really like. Now, there are people who I know who are in their 60s, 70s, who still play badminton, and they are regular attendees, participants, because they love that sport so much. They enjoy. They don't feel like they are wasting time. But some other people, they assume that it's a waste of time because they don't love that sport. So for you also, there may be things like that. I have seen very old people, such as 75, 80, even 81, 82, that aged people who have retired from their employers. They get together even during the daytime, and they play cards, they play bridge in locations, they visit each other. So you also have to find means and ways to ensure that you are comfortable and you are mentally contented. Supportive and caring husband, of course, is a challenge. All the husbands are not supporting equally. And if there are male engineers in this forum, they would not probably agree with me. But what I see is, in most of the time, while we all find fault with female or wives or women at home, but if you really look at the core or the real grounds on which they really fight with you, that's because they have a feeling that you have the authority and the space to do what you want, while I don't have. So that has to be eliminated through some tactics and strategies. And the moment you do that, there'll be a lot of harmony in your home front as well. The other factor is that a lot of parents find it difficult to provide transport for their children, because for their minors and children, because the places where they school is either not in the same direction that they're going to office, or it's to totally different location, and these kind of issues are also there. So if you can adjust those, that will also help you. Participation in spiritual and cultural activities is something that we all can do. If I have to name one of the best countries who do this, is India. If you take the female women employees in India, they never miss any of their spiritual and cultural. I'm not asking you to not miss anything, but I'm just giving you a hint here. If you have any spiritual or cultural activities that which you really like or love to attend, you attend those, because by attending those also, that helps you to overcome stress, have a peaceful mind, so that you can well balance your house and office work and all that. So the other thing is, when you participate in social work, that also supports you a lot. Now, these are some of the personal enhancements that you can do as part of the solution for the work-life balance. Now, let's look at a little background from the United Kingdom. The work-life balance was first appeared in use in 80s as part of the women's liberation movement. Of course, to be honest with you, in Sri Lanka, we didn't have such issue in 80s, because in Sri Lanka, the world's first women prime minister was from Sri Lanka, and that's a fact. And moreover, the women in Sri Lanka always had a respectable position in their families, even in the society. Even today, when we see a female standing, I don't know how it happens today, but when we were schooling, we used to offer the seat even for elderly females, because we respected them a lot. Even today, when you go to if you visit your when you visit your relations, friends, there is some level of respect that you will pay to the women. So in Sri Lanka, that was, but in other countries, that was not the case. Therefore, the women in other countries had to fight for it. But prior to this women's liberation movement, even before, way before that, there was industrial revolution within which, at which point period, the workers had to work for at least 100 hours per week, right? So 100 hours per week. Not only the women and men, even the children those days had to work 100 hours per week. Children at 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So that was the situation where the eyes were open for people overseas in different countries, UK and US, where people had to fight for themselves to manage their work and life. And thereafter, a lot of legal reforms were adopted, where 40 hours per week was introduced, and that was made a legal requirement that one confines the number of hours of work during a week to 40 hours. And most of the laws that we have implemented here in Sri Lanka have come from the UK, and therefore there is some similarity in our laws and UK laws. And that's where we really have bought certain contents for implementation in Sri Lanka, while such implementations were not really required. But I'm not saying wrong, or I'm not finding anything wrong there. But our laws can be further refined to support the ground level requirements of the female employees, not just by following what the UK and the US does in terms of looking after the employees in those countries. Now, work-life balance has evolved to take into account both female and male workers, as I told you earlier. It's not only female employees, but male as well. But if you remember, I told you something very important, that there's a notion or a norm in the market where people believe that females are the ones who have to look after the families. They have to shoulder all the responsibility. That's a norm. Now, some inappropriate thing that the people do is, while they are well aware that the women have to wear many hats as individual, they even praise that, appreciate it a lot. Through appreciation, what they do is they confine those responsibilities only to you. So you have to look after, you have to play all the roles simultaneously, while beading into all the roles where you are not able to play any role well. So this applies to the employees who work full-time in jobs. Imagine the situation where somebody who works full-time in an organization, and they are praised for the many hats that they wear, while there is no duty assumed or responsibility assumed by the rest of the people in the society. And you yourself have to fend yourself or look after yourself and find your own means and ways to manage work life. So you're totally isolated. That's not right. That's where the real issue, now I'm digging into the real issue little by little. The research shows that working moms are more likely than dads to assume more responsibilities at home. That's a biological reason on one hand, but on the other hand, that's a set rule in the society by the people, right? This means that more women assume multiple roles outside of their jobs, more roles outside of their jobs, while being expected to maintain the same efficiency as their male counterparts. And you are expected to show the same level of efficiency in the organization by your leaders and employers at large, while you are also expected to play all the roles equally, irrespective of its official or home. So there is some inappropriate or responsibility that are lopsided. They're not balanced. So this is where the imbalance or the off balance need to be corrected. And this is where you can, as a forum of female engineers, can really target and drive this as a group of people towards the institutional requirement, where you pose this question to them and shoulder this responsibility on the institutions for them to give you solutions. But when I say that, you will go with solutions as well. The implementation, the execution has to come from the institutions. Any questions that you have on this particular slide? This is a critical one. If you got the point, Will, you as a woman is praised because, appreciated because you wear multiple hats as an individual, but they want you to perform as good as a male employee, right? But there is no support for you to do so. So this is in brief where the problem is. Any questions that you have? Now, as I told you, the real problem here is that the notions of work-life balance are individualistic and still place the onus on women to find the solution. So this is why we always have to talk about work-life balance for women more often, even today, because you try to find a balance between your work and life through different means and ways, and you are trying to find solutions using your own tools and techniques. Like I told you in the personal enhancers, which you saw earlier, you can do it to a certain extent, but it's highly individualistic, right? The struggles the women face as a result of wearing multiple hats tend to be beneficial to the society, as I told you earlier. The society will always keep quiet as long as they are benefited. They are not going to talk for you, right? So you are definitely overburning yourself, and you are overladen with a lot of responsibilities. And now we are stuck because there is no such support from the people in the institutions to overcome this situation. Now, why do I say this? Do I say this to discourage you? No. I am saying this to unearth or dig out the real issue. The result is that women are pushed and more women are speaking up against the myth of work-life balance. Have you seen so-called successful female or women? They talk about the myth of work-life balance, and they are saying work-life balance was not an issue for me. And they share their experiences with you, saying how they are forced to choose between aspects, such as I had to give up my child's university education and I had to keep him here, but I performed in the organization and I became the chairman of this company. That's like a major story for them. Do you know why they say it? It's not because they are happy about it. It's because they are pushed to say it. They are pushed, and they are pushed to the wall to speak up like that. And that's the result of all these discussions. Now, why do I say all this to you? Because when you know where you stand, you will know how to tackle it. Any questions that you have? Any arguments? So we need to now find out how women can achieve work-life balance without being overladen with responsibilities meant for all of the society to shoulder together. When you have 10 people in a group, why should one take the responsibility of all? All 10 have to equally bear the responsibilities. Now, work-life balance is something that has to be tackled in that manner. While you will have your own personal ways of managing it, that's a different story. It's a totally different arm. And that arm, I'm not going to talk, because it's about managing stress, managing time, managing your personal arrangements. It's about that, which we saw even earlier very slightly. But the other arm, which is the one which is important, where we have to really stand up as professionals, because we have a clear base or basis for this argument and for this demand, right? If somebody says, no, we have to work on equal grounds for men and women, that's not right. If you take the society as a large organization, there is no such parity in responsibility. There is always disparity, where women have to wear more hats, take more responsibility. So that impacts the organization, and the organizations cannot work without female, because the inputs, the skill set of female is way different to a man, and that's an important input in business today. So this is how the argument should be taken forward. Therefore, what you need is not more tips on how to manage work at home that you already know, but rather, as I said earlier, institutional support that understands and adopts the peculiarities of being a career woman in today's society. They have to adopt and understand the uniqueness of the female contribution in organizations, right? And why not we accept this as a fact? If you are a father, if I'm a father, if there are fathers in this world, when they have daughters, they want their daughters to be well learned professionals. They don't want their daughters to be just housewives. Of course, they may want they would want their daughters to be good housewives as well. But do they stop it at that? Then why do they try to progress them through education, and why do they try to give them exposure, experience, education? Why do they do that? So it's the same thing for you. You have a very clear ground here, even to reform legal standing or even to draft a legal document and get it approved so that all the employers in Sri Lanka will have to support you towards it, because there's a clear argument for this. Now, the solution is what we are going to discuss here now. You have to discuss this issue, the work-life balance, right, with the parameters of institutional agencies, encompassing both social and organizational support. Now, social institutions are the family, the government, the media, schools, religious establishments, clubs, and financial and policy groups. They need to play their roles in influencing support for women through the information they foist on society. Now, when you see all these institutions, they talk very high about the fair approach, equality, right, and support for everyone and all that. So they have to now choose the support that they should be looking for or driving for the women employees in Sri Lanka, right? And if they're talking about fairness, shared social responsibilities, and if they promote equal resource allocation for everyone, it has to be done so for female employees as well, right? What is the issue here? Now, work-life balance, when targeted at women, okay, the management reserves the right to look into the issue as a exclusive issue for the females, right? Because work-life balance, when you target at women, right, so it becomes an exclusive issue for you, that is females, right? And what would that do? That would do nothing, but that will minimize your need for support of the rest of the society. So I'm showing you the other side of the issue. And when we say work-life balance is an exclusive issue for women, right? And when we say that the management or the employers reserves the right, they reserve the right here to minimize the women's need for support from the rest of the society, because it's an assumption made you as a female employee have to look after all this. So no support from us. Can you see the disconnect? So this is where we have to tackle. More men have to reevaluate their roles as fathers, husbands, and members of the family and assume shared responsibilities for the home alongside women. And if that's not done, that's going to be a recurring issue for the female employees. And as you know, as husbands and wives, they all love their children. I'm not saying the husbands are not, they don't love their, they really love their children. But the error, the cardinal error that the society has made is, like I mentioned earlier, male, the primary is office, secondary is house, home. Female, primary is home, secondary is office. So that is, they're off balance, they're not balanced, they're lopsided, they're not equal. These norms need to be eradicated or removed, eliminated. They should not stay any longer in the society. That's where we can really target our achievement here. The organizations must implement human resources strategies and policies to address the present cooperative environment challenges with women's work-life balance. I am trying to propose something here. You, as the IESL Sri Lanka, the Women's Forum, you need to raise a paper now requesting, taking it to the Labour Office and to the Parliament here, that there is a policy change that is required in Sri Lankan society. If you want the contribution of female, this is what is required for the female employees. Make it a point to convert it to a law and at least start that conversation now. And the moment you do is, they will say, do a benchmarking and find out which country does it. This is the easiest way to get rid of the demands of people, either by a government or by an employer. They can easily get rid of it by saying, no, there is no such thing in the market. We can't do it. Do a benchmarking and see, are we not doing anything that they don't do? Are we not equal? They might say, no, you're equal. That's the easiest way to get rid of a demand or just deviate the thinking of people. But what should happen is a country or an employer have to be the market leader of change. There's always a market leader. Why should you want to wait for somebody else? You initiate something. If it's not progressing, just stop it. You keep space for stop it also. So a safe approach is not always right. It's not appropriate. Benchmarking is a safe approach that the people take. They have to strive to be the market leader. So the moment you forward a paper, concept paper of this sort, they will come out with this feedback. I can guarantee you that. So you have the answer now. You must say there's always someone who has to initiate, and that has to be done. Now we go on to look at some of the strategies which the institutions can better support for working women. And when you see the strategies, you might probably think these strategies are no longer valid, you might think. Especially when you look at the promoting equal access to literacy, education, vocational IT training for women. You might think, no, we already have it. That's your assumption. You might also think we have equitable access to professional development, or you might think, actually not. If that's the case, let's discuss that later. Before that, we will look at what is the first strategy that we are proposing, exit and re-entry plans. Women, particularly those with younger children, are less likely to work than other women because they have a lot of responsibility. They have to give up their careers because the responsibility of children come beyond everything, right? While the married fathers work more than the other men. Now, married fathers, they work more hours, they take more responsibilities as compared to unmarried father because they have to look after or spend on the family. The other side of the flip side of the story is for the female. When you have children, younger children, you are less likely to work than the women who are not married. So therefore, women are disproportionately impacted by having children. So when you have children, you are in a way, you are ill-treated. Not the nice word to use, but I have to use that word. You are ill-treated in a way. Or in other words, you are disproportionately looked after. Therefore, it's critical for the business to discuss how they can resist them in transitioning out of and back into the office after having kids. And one might say, no, you can't go home and come back when you want, which is fine. But there has to be a set process for a re-entry as well for a female employee. I have seen certain banks. I have a lot of access to the information in banks, how they operate and some of the strategies they implement. What they do is actually they allow their female employees to early retire when they have younger children. And when there are vacancies, they are allowed to reapply and they are taken back to the organization. And it's a great thing to do, right? Because then their contribution will also be very high because the they got the chance to look after their children, ensure that they fulfill their responsibilities to a great extent in the family. So they have a re-entry plan as well. And their contribution in terms of productivity will also very high. And when this is given, the male employees or the men might say, they might feel jealous about it. They should not be envious of it, because that's an opportunity, not really an opportunity, that's a responsibility of the employer towards the women employees, because they wear multiple hats, not like us. So there's no reason for them to feel jealous about it. It's not a grant, or it's not a special benefit given to female. It's not, there's nothing special there. That is an obligation of the employer. Now, the next one is dependent child care support. And here we are not talking about having a support in terms of is part of providing dependent care side. But when I say this, you might think, no, this is not required because we have our own child care support centers and all that. But if you look at the overseas, how they operate, it's very different. In their child care support services, there's a standard law that operates, that really looks after the entire well-being of the children, mental and physical. There is a method in which all the daycare centers have to operate, right? So this is, on one hand, it's a great business to be in daycare center or looking after children, but on the other hand, it's a highly responsible job. So dependent child care support is not just parking child in a location where there are a couple of more children, somebody looks after those. It's not that. It's like another school for children to play, to improve their knowledge, for them to sleep, for them to mingle with other children, for them to do what they like. So it's a totally different one. So that is something that we have to look at if you're looking at a stabilized nation in the future. And if we continue to keep our female employees or the mothers away from children while they're in organizations, there will be a very bad impact on our future generations, which we already see. So there's a responsibility therefore. Can you see? We can't just say that and write paper articles and do research and keep them in drawers. There has to be laws implemented to ensure that we look after the future generations, and that's a responsibility of the employer. Don't think bad about it. If the employers can spend millions of money on vehicles, branded vehicles for their top management, don't take me wrong for saying this, but if they can spend a lot of money on CSR, on advertising, why can't they spend money on childcare support? Why can't they do it for the future generations and to look after their female employees? They can. That itself is a merit for organizations to do. Workplace flexibility. So work schedules can help address concerns about lack of paid leave. Now, in Sri Lanka, of course, we have annual leave. Most countries have that, but some other countries don't have. When there is flexible work schedules, you don't necessarily have to apply for leave always. Example, if you have to attend to a meeting at school on behalf of your child, you don't have to actually apply for a leave there, because you are already given flexible work schedules to work, right? And wellness programs and family support policies in the workplace are also not required if there is sufficient flexible work schedules that are there. So we have to look at not having, but increased workplace flexibility. Don't take it wrong. You might say, oh, we already have workplace flexibility. I'm not talking about what is there. I'm talking about increased workplace flexibility, right? So this is different to what you and I already have. So this is something that we can propose in our concept paper to the rest of the institutions, including the Labour Office and the government of Sri Lanka. Let's move on to the next strategy. Equitable access to professional development. This is where I wanted to talk a little bit more. Management should provide fair access to professional development opportunities, including networking, client development, and mentorship. for women of all levels and sectors. Now, the problem here is when you go to a jungle, right, where there are a lot of different kinds of trees, then only you will know the biodiversity, the different types of trees and plants that are there. As long as you have not been into that wood or the jungle, you will not know what is there. Now, right now, the equitable access to professional development opportunities is not there for you. Therefore, you are in a major assumption that you already have it, because you haven't seen the access to professional development opportunities that are there for women, especially in other countries. I'm not saying all the countries, but at least a few. If you want to experience what I say, go to a networking forum where certain organizations organize networking events. Count and see how many females are there. At least 95% would be male, 5% would be female at the start. Towards the end, 100% will be male, 0% will be female. So where is networking opportunity there? You are still burning their hands with the responsibilities, asking them to go home early and do the work. So there is no opportunity given. Right? Now, professional development is not about your education. It's another strategy we are going to look at. The mentorship, when you have the chance to work with mentors, with executive coaches, you get more chances to be more comfortable performing your job, balancing your work life, because these are professional inputs that you get. And you are not getting these services today, right? But most of the multinationals are actually looking at these. So the next strategy, the final strategy that we are proposing here is promoting equal access to literacy, education, vocational IT training for women. Now you might wonder why IT training. I'm already a programmer. Education, I'm already an engineer. Literacy, I have succeeded through all my exams. Vocational IT training, I have completed all of them. Yes, true. But here we are talking about not you. We are talking about budding or new female engineers. So they all should have the equal access to literacy, education, vocational and IT training for women. Because many women are unable to make high-level contributions at work due to lack of training and education. Now, take some of the incidents that you faced in your own offices. If you made an error, a mistake, BRD versus what you actually programmed, your codes would have had differences. And the client would have come back and told you, no, this functionality is not there. The UAT is totally failed. And it's a cost. Why? Because there is lack of training. Although you think you are fulfilled with all the knowledge and education requirements, you are not. It has to be a continuous professional development opportunity that is given to you. So the moment I quoted this example, you would have realized what I'm saying, right? And that is why the female employees, they continue to be underrepresented in historical male-dominated professions. Now, in female, like engineers, if you count the number of female engineers in Sri Lanka, that can be a very low number, right? Despite abundant training opportunities and educational opportunities that are there for even female employees, right? And if you see some of the programs, these programs are seldom designed for women. And if you take some of the programs, now even the cocktails and all that, now why have they forgotten the female employees here? Look at some of the programs. You can't take part in some of the activities. Take some of the workshops that you would have attended, outward bound training, etc. Were they customized to female employees as well? No, there is no equal access. So these are things that we can look at. Now, this is where my real discussion ends. And to be honest with you, my whole idea of having this presentation to you is to encourage you to develop a concept paper. At least it will go to the history, where we will raise a very firm paper as engineers of Sri Lanka that we have a right to demand for these services as female employees. because you have overladen us. You have overburned our fingers already by giving us more responsibilities. And are you asking us to stay home and do the work, but not work? No, you are not asking us to do that also. You want us to go to school. You want us to get through O-levels, A-levels. You want us to get into university. So where is your strategy coming from? So this is the argument. Okay, now I open the forum for you to ask questions. I'll be able to provide you answers or support you with feedback to the best of my knowledge.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dulip. Please, this is the kind invitation for our audience to come up with questions regarding this webinar. So if you have questions, you can text in the message chat box.
Yes, you can do so.
Can I ask one question, Engineer Gunatilaka? I'm Kamala Gunawardana.
Yes, sure, Ms. Kamala Gunawardana. Please go ahead.
Yeah, the thing is actually I joined in the it was halfway gone, but anyway, it was easier to grab what said, yeah, because I really got it. And my question is not a question. My idea here is normally, as you said, it's a tradition or it's a concept in Sri Lanka or Asian countries. Normally, husband, the male character runs in a diplomatic way, but the female character has to run the show at home. But at the same time, there are women in Sri Lanka. Officially, there are many ladies. Their main concern also sometimes the employment or the job or their social services, right? But generally, when we go for a job, or when ladies are entered into a engineering job or the professional area, there's automatically some attitude is coming out. There's a lady. How can we work with them, right? That is there. You have mentioned how the employers have to take this matter and they have to give the, flexible or the healthy, friendly environment to get the output from ladies. It's normally, actually, it's not happening. Many places, especially from like consultancy area where I am coming from, it is not happening. I can say that, right? So in such a situation, actually, what your advice for ladies?
Right. So my advice is
Thank you.
always, yes, no, that's a very good question, a practical question. So I have seen these situations in some of the organizations, of course, which I worked and as well as which I am seeing or at least have the exposure to. What the organization has done is they have a very strict employee guideline or like a laid out process for, irrespective of the gender, all employees to voice out their issues, escalate their issues that they face in the organization discreetly or even openly. So there is a process of escalation available, which is a laid down process in the organizational documents, in policies. And these organizations have a top level honor and recognition for these policies. All have to abide by them. So it's on one hand, it's to do with the organizational culture, policies, and policies will also drive a particular culture. And on the other hand, the other way to look at this issue is to bring in new laws into the business, where the employees will have to, whether they like it or not, they will have to ensure that they look after the female employees by providing equitable opportunities for them. And thirdly, some of the organizations have very strong and critical training approach where they make it mandatory for the senior leaders to complete certain training programs, which are highly technical and practical in nature, which really allows, they have a major program, like a campaign in encouraging or in wanting the senior leaders to get over or get rid of personal biasness when they come to making decisions. And certain interview guidelines are given. And for the female employees, there's escalation process to highlight the issues. So they can do it without providing names, that is anonymously. So there are lots of opportunities like that. So we need to look at it in a suitable way. If your organization already have these policies, they have to be strengthened. If you don't have such policies, guidelines, you can implement them. If you think it's had to be operated outside of the organization, like I mentioned earlier, a concept paper to the Labour Office or Department of Labour, the Sri Lanka government, to the Parliament would be a great way to take or approach for the benefit of the female employees.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Do we have any other questions? Yeah, I think we have. I will read out that. Sometimes single ladies face more problem than married ladies in workplace because their boss know they are insecure. How do tackle such kind of situation?
Okay, so the question is that sometimes even unmarried female employees are facing challenges in organizations compared to married employees, is what it says. Right. No, that is true. That is true. I didn't totally excluded the unmarried female employees here. There'll be some level of obstacles that the female employees, even though they are individual, would have to face because of the same situations I spoke earlier. So the same policies will apply even to you as an individual who is not married, because we have a culture within which you operate. So as you as a female employee cannot take the steps or behave in the same way that a male would do. So it's part of the solution actually what we spoke. If you have any specific question, I would be able to probably address it. And I'm not sure if I addressed the question or answer the question well.
So actually, are there any legal background for such kind of situations? So that means
for protection of female employees, there is the penal code, the under sexual harassment, bullying. There are lots of guidelines for the employers, right? But in terms of managing work life, other than the number of working hours, which is 40 per week, and any excess work has to be limited up to a given number of overtime hours. Apart from those, and there are certain things, but it doesn't well cover the issues that we face today, the law.
Yeah.
For example, provision of transport for female employees who have children, which is a must actually, because now, not only that, it's just a minor thing that I mentioned. So the legal coverage is not complete. It has to be improved further. So that is why my insist you to raise a paper and take it forward. You can get involved a law firm or a legal support also when you draft it, and take it for discussion, please, because you are the most powerful entity in Sri Lanka as the engineers. You have a regard, you have a respect as engineers. You are supposed to be professionally mannered, intelligent, and all that. So you have a major authority and power to do it as compared to any other female forum in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Dulip. So I agreed with you. So I think as women engineers of ISL, we can do something for that one, and it's better to address those kind of situations, because most of the ladies, unmarried ladies, and also not only unmarried ladies, but also married ladies face so many difficulties in workplace, sometimes which cannot be expressed to them, but due to their work commitments. But I think those kind of things should be addressed
Yes,
promptly.
correct. If you need any support in preparing the paper or developing documents for legal approval, I'll be able to support you with inputs.
Thank you, Mr. Dule. Thank you so much for offering your support.
No
So,
problem.
do we have any other questions?
Yeah, I am. Mr. Dolip, I'm Devika Surya. Then
Yes.
with all these problems what we have discussed, but I have noticed a lady engineer or any female employee as a multitasker, because they are playing in the workplace as the employee, and at home, wife, mother, or sister, daughter, they are playing all the roles. But I feel like, because I have seen in my work experience, I have seen many ladies, then I have experience also, because I think the female employees can perform all these tasks better than the male employees. It's what I have experienced is that, because while we are in a high level meeting, we can just text to the child and ask whether he's okay, the child is okay, and also they can check the other extra activities and all the things they can do at one moment. But how about your experience regarding that?
I agree with you. There are even I had a couple of lady bosses who I worked for in two organizations, and the way they work, they represent the leadership board, the way they approach the work, and all that is excellent. I always appreciate those bosses, and I truly acknowledge them in all possible forums for the contributions they made towards the office and the work, office and their house. That is their children and their husbands and all that. And as I said, like you also mentioned, they wear multiple hats. While there is some opportunity for such female employees to perform well in the organizations at ease, there is some gap there where the employers have not really understood the contributions that they have to make. Now, for example, I was actually coaching a particular female employee recently, and she is excellent worker. She has been performing really well for 8 years in that organization, in that bank. And she works in the corporate banking sector. Very unfortunately, she had to deliver a baby, and she had to stay home for more than 4 months. So generally it's 9, I think some 3 months or something. She had to stay for an additional month. So when she came back after maternity leave and the extended leave, her name was not listed for the promotion that year. The reason gave was that she couldn't perform because she was on maternity leave, which is wrong. Just that she took 1 month more because her baby was not well. And this kind of disparities and disagreements are there in organizations. So that is why it is sometimes important to legalize some of the support that is required by the employer at top level, so that it will become a norm later. Initially it will be difficult, but later it will be very supportive. We'll have an excellent nation of female employees working day in, day out for organizations.
Yes, thank you. I agree with you.
Thank you. So if there are no more questions, we can conclude. Sajani, over to you to conclude, Sajani.
Yes, sure. Thank you so much, Mr. Dulip Pichetileka, for presenting a very comprehensive content on today's topic. And thank you very much for spending your valuable time today here. So on behalf of Women Engineers Forum, I would like to present the virtual token of appreciation for you, which will be delivered to you in future. So this is presented to Mr. Dulip Pichetileka by the Women Engineers Forum of the Institution of Engineers Sri Lanka as an expression of appreciation for the tremendous contribution as the resource person for the webinar. Sorry, I couldn't present that one, so I will share it in screen.
I think Mr. Dulip has to unshare the screen.
Yes,
Yes.
sure.
Yes. My apologies for that.
So this is presented to Mr. Dulip Vijayatilaka by the Women Engineers Forum of the Institution of Engineers Sri Lanka as an expression of appreciation for the tremendous contribution as the resource person for the webinar on It Began Long Ago. We continue the story of the engineers, the women, on 19th of November 2022. Thank you very much, Mr. Dulip Vijayatilaka, for
Thank you very
presenting
much,
today.
Sanjani. It's an honor for me to have in front of you delivering this presentation. And I also believe that it gave you a lot of inputs to take another step ahead to look after your profession and your people. And I'm always there to support you, of course, free of charge as part of my professional services. Just let me know anytime if you want any services. Thank you very much.
Thank
Have
you
a nice
so
evening.
much.
Thanks.
Good
so
evening
much.
now.
Good evening.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dulip. Thank you for your presentation, and also special thanks to Sajani for organizing this, coordinating with our resource person. Thank you all for participating. Thank you very much. Good night.
Good
Good night.
night all.